404, this is 7, stand by a minute. Just come on, what is your attack angle?
Okay, talk to him, see what that did. Charlie Horse, 88.
24, traffic 275.
85 just made a pass in there. Can you give us any?
Go to 21, 77.
Roger, sir. Be advised we have Jolly Green 21 and 66 standing by over
Okay, I'll put it a little closer than those trees. Let me come around with a Lao 3 and I'll put it on those trees there.
Full name Richard M. Hall. And let's see, years of service?
Yeah, or the years you were in Vietnam.
Vietnam was from 1 September 68 to 1 September 69. It was exactly 1 year, right to the day.
Wow.
Ewing and Beggarly came with me on that.
What squadron were you with?
602nd was the squadron. I was advised, put it that way, that the 602nd was Sandy. And that mission, the whole idea of rescue was something that appealed to me. And I felt really strongly about that. It's hard to explain, Rich, but there's something, well, we were talking about Forrest Fenn. You remember that deal?
Yes, can you tell me, why don't you lead me through the Forrest Fenn experience?
Well, the call sign was litter. Forrest Fenn was pre-briefed. It was going to be a first flight effort. Call sign litter. And I don't remember the numbers on that particular deal, but we knew we were going out to a relatively undefended area deep in the Karst, but we didn't know exactly where he was. But Nail had an idea. So the Nail FAC was talking to Jim Jamerson, was Sandy 1 at that time. I was 2, John Carlson was 3, and for the life of me, none of us has been able to come up with who 4 was that day. And I don't have any pictures of him. Damn it. Anyhow, we fired up and followed the Jollies over there. And this was in the narrow neck of Laos. And there had evidently been an arc light bombing during the night. So we really didn't know what we were getting into. But we went whistling along, which when in A-1, you can't whistle along very good. That's 130 indicated was really humming. Anyhow, Major Fenn at that time was deep in a cup in a Karst bowl. He was on the west face of the Karst. And of course, this took a while to establish. And I'm trying to hang on to the Jollies, keep them in sight, keep 3 and 4 in sight, and still stay with my flight leader. My prime responsibility is cover his 6. So I'm really busy. There's a lot going on. And of course, there's 3 radios in the airplane, all of which are yelling various things at you at various times. And it took a while. We finally got everybody kind of in that area. And Nail said, all right, Sandy, you're there. And he's right there someplace. So Jim went down to take a look. And there was so much chatter and confusion at that time. I said, okay, what we're going to do here, I put down a Willie Pete bomb that was unarmed. That's white phosphorus to the uneducated. Mm-hmm. And the damn thing didn't behave as advertised. It wouldn't. It just wouldn't come up through the trees. So I said, okay, selected the other one and dropped it hot. And when that thing burst, it's a huge burst of white phosphorus in the trees. And I said, all right, 3 and 4, you stay south of there with the Jollies. Lead and I are going in. All right. So Jim, meanwhile, had all but discovered where Major Fenn was hiding at that time. Well, while he was circling, trying to pinpoint an exact position, Jolly Low come in without invitation. And Jim talked about that at the debrief. I'll never forget it. He said, almost had to fire a round across his nose to slow him down. That was Colonel Morris, J.I. Morris, flying that airplane, and he did a hell of a good job. Major Fenn came up on the radio, and he was puffing. He was walking, or actually he was moving some really rough country. And he was against the wall of the Karst in such a way that Jolly could not hover directly over him. Jolly could only get so close, and then he'd be up against the Karst. So the Jollies held at a position, or a Jolly Low lead held at a position where he could get the string down, and he damn near ran out of string. He had all of it down. And Major Fenn was able to get to it, although he was puffing hard. He'd obviously been climbing. And we pulled him up, and Jolly took him home. I have a picture of Colonel Carlson and myself and Colonel Morris and Major Fenn. And we're all standing there talking alongside of the helicopter after the rescue. And he was one happy man. He really felt good about this. Now the rest of the story is what we talked about last night, as far as that goes. That Forrest Fenn became an art dealer. And he had quite a bit of money that he had accumulated. And he packed a box, and I'm not sure of the description of the box. I believe it was a wooden crate, but we can deal with that later. The box contained bar gold and jewelry and gemstones valued at over $1 million. And he wrote a verse, kind of a blank verse, as to how to find this out in the countryside. And he hid it somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. And sure enough, about 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, somebody found that box. And whoever that was, and I never did learn the name, really, really stumbled on a lot of money.
I remember when that was happening because a bunch of my advertising film buddies, they weren't sure where it was in the country, but they were all like, oh my God, this is out here somewhere, you know, and they were calling me going, okay, we know it's in the mountains, and they knew I was in the Smokies, so they were asking me, where would this fit? So they were asking me, I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, well, they didn't want to tell me they were hunting for treasure. They didn't want to bring me in on it. They just wanted a little advice. I was like, well, this is what I think from what you're saying, but I'm not sure, you know.
No.
So, but everybody in the world was looking for that.
That's true. It was a worldwide deal. People were trying to position it, and then they'd go into that country and so on and so forth.
So you rescued...
Anyhow, we rescued the man that became how do you want to say that? He positioned the box.
Yeah. I've heard of pirates. What do you call the guy that hides the treasure? He was the treasure master, but so he was an what'd you say, an F-100 pilot?
F-100 pilot, yeah.
Now, was he shot down, or do you
Yes, he was shot down the day before. And I'm sorry, I can't give you the exact month of the rescue. I don't remember.
Oh, no, that's fine.
But
can you explain for the folks out here, a lot of people don't understand what a karst is and how rugged that terrain is when you get into the karsts, in the Karst Mountains.
Physically, the karst itself is a mountainous structure composed of something close to limestone. It's not really igneous rock. It's something short of that. It's a little softer as far as that goes. What was the other question?
But they jut up out of the ground hundreds of feet.
They do, and it's in some cases thousands. And in some cases they're quite pretty. They're forestation, vegetation, so on and so forth on them is really quite striking. There's one by Mugia Pass, north of Mugia. There's a karst formation with a waterfall. That is the prettiest thing. And I remember looking out the window thinking about, gee, this is really, really nice country. It's a shame to bomb it.
Yeah. So any other missions you'd like to talk about while we're here? Because that's pretty cool how you rescued Forrest, and he'd gone on
he went on to be, something like that. But because I was a captain at that time, they gave me a little room to run. And my checkout at that time, remember they were really short of pilots in '68 because they'd had the bombing pause, which gave everybody time to breathe. And it worked out in our favor. But they were so short of pilots that my entire checkout to combat qualification consisted of one ride in the right seat and one ride in the left seat, and that's it. I was qualified for combat right there. I remember Major Tom Campbell was in my right seat for that qualification ride. And on the way back, he said, "Rich, you didn't screw up any more than anybody else does. You're good to go." Holy smokes.
That's it, huh?
That was it. That particular mission was flown against Kon Kai, which is the Chinese embassy in North Laos. Mm-hmm. And we were ordered specifically not to hit certain buildings in that area. And I remember on the brief, they went over it and they had photographs and they talked about it incessantly. They said, do not bomb these buildings. So we had a bunch of jets working with us. And our responsibility was to mark the target and hightail it out of town. Well, this is my first combat ride in the left seat, and I'm kind of lost. And I managed to bomb off the rocket pod when requested to mark the target because Lee had run out of rockets. Dumb trick, new guy trick, but that's the way it was. I remember that day. Do you know how big the E model is?
Oh, it's massive.
And a lot of windows.
Yeah.
There was a 37 millimeter burst in every window, in every direction, all the way around us. And I was trying to hang on to flight lead and do my things, stayed in a position to cover him, or at least figure out where he went down if we had that trouble. And all these flak bursts around us, 37 millimeter. And in the middle of this, Sandy 3 has just gone down. And that was just east of where we were. So we immediately asked if we should go help. Well, what would we do? He was out of rockets, I was out of rockets. So we could have covered a rescue effort, I guess, as far as that goes. This is still my first mission in the airplane. First combat mission.
So after that, what were your thoughts when you got back on day one, at the end of day one?
You know what I'm thinking? Huh? You're going to die. There's no way. Oh, God. It was tragic. Charlie Kuhlman was the guy that was killed. Was later to be cut. I'm not sure if they ever recovered the remains or not. I can't allude to that. Charlie evidently attempted a split S from low altitude and didn't quite make it. And he said something like, "I got him in sight, come on down here with me." And he wanted his wingman to come down with him, but it was nuts. It was gone. Out of that mission that day, when we got back, Major Tom O'Connor was flying another aircraft. And we had all joined up and come home as one big flight. And Tom came over the air and he said, "I want to be the last to land." He said, "I think I've got some battle damage." And I can't tell you why, but that made a deep impression on me at that time. I hope he's here, and I hope we get a chance to talk. He was a true gentleman, really.
He wasn't going to land before anybody else.
Because he couldn't be sure.
Yeah.
He'd taken a round in the wing, and he couldn't be sure that he was going to get his landing gear down.
That's a leader.
That's a leader. Yeah, that's a man, by God.
Yeah.
They don't make them any better than that.
Do you have any stories about SARS or prairie fire missions that you might have pulled? Any troops in contact?
There was only one. We didn't do very many of the prairie fires. We did, the hobos handled a lot of that, the first ASCS. But they and the Dusties understood each other pretty well, and there was some awfully good work done there with the prairie fire teams, SOG teams. Mm-hmm. I remember one of the Dusty pilots telling me that he was a bit nervous about this whole thing. He said, "You got all these guys in the back of the helicopter, they're in black suits, no rank on any of them. They've all got hot weapons." He said, "What are you going to do with a whole airplane load of guys with hot weapons?"
Put them anywhere they want to go.
Anywhere they want to go. It's up to you, boys.
Yeah.
The only time that I ran into a close air thing that was serious, right after we took off, they called us and said, get a hold of the airborne cricket, the airborne triple C, right away. They need you. Okay. So we gave Cricket a call on the VHF, and we've got a SOG team pinned down. It's a LRP. It was a 7-man team. They're stuck in the Karst, and we need you to go help them out. Okay, we can do that. So we went to that frequency for those guys on the FM radio. So they're on handheld radios now. And we could actually talk to them. But at the time, bear in mind, they were pinned down and under fire. And only dogs could have heard their voices. We're pinned down, we're getting shot at. And I don't blame them. It was an exciting moment. And, Firefly, where are you? Well, I'm on my way. Well, how long? I said, I don't know. I don't know where you're at. And it takes forever to get someplace in the Skyraider. You're just not going very fast. And eventually, we were talking, and he said, you just went over me. And there was a clump of trees right off my starboard side that was evidently distinctive in that layout of the topography at that time. Because I told him, I don't want to give away your position. I'll be right back. Where are they? And his voice had come down a little bit. And he said, they're in the trees, they're in the trees. Okay, all right, I'll be right back. I don't want to give away your position. So I did a Whifferdale turn, taking it easy on the airplane, because if the airplane talks to you, and when it starts shuddering, you better ease off. Whatever you're doing to it, the airplane don't like it. Came back in, and I had that group of trees, and I had what he had given me as his position. I told two, drop yours right on mine, and we put down 2 cans of napalm apiece. And this voice on the ground came down about 3 octaves. He said, ain't nobody shooting out of there, sir. Okay, now, where's the rest of them? Where do you want us to go? So we orbited their position for about 45 minutes. And he kept asking me, how's your fuel, how's your fuel? And finally it got to be annoying. I said, I'll worry about my fuel, let's worry about you getting out of there.
Yeah.
So we stayed, and we were doing just fine. We still had weapons on board. We could have helped somebody else.
Most people don't understand the fuel, the longevity that aircraft could stay on target.
That's true. That's true.
How long could you stay airborne with the Skyraider?
You're burning approximately 100 gallons an hour. And there was anywhere from 300 to 500 gallons in that expendable centerline tank, depending. And internal fuel was just a little bit better than 1,200 and something pounds. What would that be? Around 200 and something gallons, a little over 200 gallons. So really, in total, you've got something like 5 or 6 hours, depending how you manage your fuel. And you could stay on scene, because the fuel consumption at low altitude or at altitude was about the same, give or take a little bit.
So you could stay over that target with those guys for 5 hours if you needed to.
If I absolutely needed to, 5 hours would work.
And that would give you plenty of time to get other aircraft in if you had to be released.
You bet. Get a hold of Cricket and get other guys to help. And then in the SAR situation, in that or cover for prairie fires or whatever, anytime you needed help, all the guys in the squadron knew the mission. This is why Sandy was so important. It was something that was exclusively held in the 602nd. And we knew that anybody with a Firefly call sign from the 602nd knew what he was doing. We had occasion once, I was flying with Tony Wiley Coyote.
Wait a minute, was his plane 606 named Wile E. Coyote?
I believe that was his aircraft.
Because that is one of the 4 that was brought back from Utapao, Thailand. So it's actually back in the U.S. And I believe it's a Kavanaugh Air Museum.
How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Wow. Anyhow.
Sorry.
Raven, calls us up and said, guys, could you please stay right on me? There's something I want to go down and take a look at, and I'm afraid I'm going to draw a lot of ground fire. So Raven went down. I'm not sure exactly where we were, but it was somewhere between Donald Duck and Van, somewhere in that along Route 61. And he was curious about something. So he went down, he got pretty low, and we were orbiting over him. And I told Tony, okay, we're going to do a 2-ship, and we're going to stay on this guy. If he gets in trouble, I'm in right away, and you take 90 on me, and we'll do a 2-ship daisy chain. And we both understood that because it came from the Sandy mission. Mm-hmm. So daisy chain meant something to him and to me and to our Raven. I got a letter from that guy, the Raven. It came about maybe 2-3 weeks later. He said, I've never felt so comfortable in my life. Thanks to you guys for being there.
There's a lot to be said for consistency in training or when a group of men know exactly what's going on.
This is one of my big, I just got in trouble on the SPADNet for that. Oh. Did you?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, because I was watching that whole conversation. I went, wow, that heated up quick.
That heated up quick, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my point was, or it still is, at that time, if you didn't have a college education, they got rid of you. And that's what happened to me, well, which is probably understandable from an academic point of view. But from a matter of practical experience or combat experience, it doesn't make a lot of sense, really. A lot of 19-year-old kids did pretty good work during War II. They didn't have any college. It's a hard thing to get around to, Rich. It's a hard thing to wrap your arms around. I would like to have finished my career at least 20 and participated a little more. But the Air Force said no. I said, all right, that's the way it goes.
So with no college degree, they had you...
I didn't make major.
Okay.
So you're out. After 13 years, I was out. At that time, we were flying T-39s in Germany. And that was another really good assignment, really good. The Germans that hosted us were really good people.
What aircraft did you fly in your career?
Started out on, it depends on what you mean by fly. I was a navigator, so I was in the back.
Okay. So you were an F4?
No. F-101.
Oh, okay. All right.
So there, we started out in training in the T-29, and we all became navigators. Then we went into the F-89J at James Conley at Waco, Texas. That's where I met my wife.
Good things happen in Waco.
Hey, not everything's bad there.
Yeah.
And out of the F-89J, I was number 2 man in the class. So we went to Kingsley Field in Oregon, which was a plum assignment, flying the F-101B. While we were there, I spent a lot of time. My boss was very lenient with my flying time. So I flew the T-33 every chance I got in the back seat. I actually tried to land the T-33 from the back seat one time. That's another story. It wasn't pretty. Anyhow, they had a C-47 for support. And 2 old majors, Major Gruy and Major Smith, were flying that C-47. And they were mean to me, Rich. They made me do things like fill out paperwork.
Lots of it.
I had to do the weight and balance. I had to do all of the IFR DD-175 paperwork. I had to do all of the old style position reports under the old style IFR system. And Major Smith actually signed me off for my private ticket. Bless his heart. But they worked my butt off. And at the time, although I understood what they were doing, I really didn't appreciate it. But it wasn't until much later I realized what was going on and came to appreciate their efforts very much. I never caught up with Major Gruy. I tried, and I did catch Major Smith at home and asked if he was going to come to one of these reunions several years ago. And he said, Rich, my health won't take it.
It breaks your heart when it gets to that point, doesn't it?
To that, yeah, it really does. It really does.
Yeah, when you finally catch up to that guy, they're like, I'm sorry, I just can't, And
Damn.
well, that's the beauty of these places. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Where else did you go? What other aircraft?
Besides the T-33 and F-101 and the C-47, then we got into pilot training. At that time it was 1967, and I asked for Williams because we had an aunt there that helped babysit. T-37, T-38, and right into the Skyraider, and that was that.
Did you ever fly jets? I'm sorry, yes, you did. A lot of the guys, when they're talking about the difference between the Skyraider and any jet aircraft, it always comes down to the torque of that engine and
Yes.
the right leg.
Yes.
So you see where I'm heading here.
You notice we have big legs.
Your right thigh is huge. Yeah.
That ain't true.
That rudder. Can you tell me a little bit about your first experience with the Skyraider when you started that thing up and got in there and felt that torque? Because that is a monster.
It is a huge engine, yeah. It really is. Ken McArn was my instructor pilot. This is down at Hurlburt now, qualifying in the Skyraider. And they taught us how to start it, which it takes some finesse to get that big engine turning. And all the little things. Ken looked at me from the right seat and he said, "You got any tail dragger time?" And I said some smart remark like, "Well, maybe," or something like that. And he did the first takeoff. And we went out and we stalled it and messed around for a few minutes. And I had to stall it, get used to what it feels like. We came back in the pattern. We were doing stop and goes. He did one landing, showed me what it looked like. He said, "Airplane's yours." So the first landing attempt, let's just say it was less than pretty, okay? Is that enough?
You didn't bend it, right?
I didn't bend it, I didn't break it, no. And he was not hovering over the stick. Ken knew me. He was at Hamilton Field by San Francisco as a pilot in the F-101. So we knew each other roughly. We came around again. I was determined to fix my mistakes, and I was going to do this or die trying. And rounded out, flared, a perfect three-point landing. Not bad. It wasn't as good as some of them. Some of them were really nice. This one was acceptable. And Ken looked at me and he said, "You lying son of a bitch, you got some tail dragger time in your past." And it's true, I did, because I originally started flying in the PA-18, the Super Cub, right there outside of Chicago in 1960. No, it'd been 1959 or 1960, somewhere in that range.
A lot of people don't understand the difference between that tail dragger and being on that trike gear. It's what can you see and where is it going?
You got that right.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's like a wheelbarrow full of wet cement. When the mains are on the ground and you're rolling along, landing, your troubles have just begun. It's going to get worse from here, gang, trust me. And a tricycle will tend to pull itself straight. So a lot of airplanes are tricycle gear.
Yeah.
The C-47 is conventional. So was the Skyraider. And it took a pilot. You'd had to keep your wits about you, especially at night.
I can imagine that would be just about the first night flight landing. Jim George said when you hadn't flown nights in a while, he said your first flight was just short of terrifying. Then your second night was okay. Third night was old hat. He said, but that first night, if you hadn't flown in a while of nights, whew.
Especially the G models. They have no landing lights in the wings, the swing down lights.
Yeah.
No. The only light you have is the one in the knee of the left main gear.
I did not know that.
And that's it. That's the only light on the aircraft. And all that damn thing did, really, was illuminate the prop tips, that yellow prop tip. So you turn that light on, you got this big yellow arc in front of you. Oh, that's a big help. Turn the thing off again and land by reference to the runway lighting.
Wow. I had not heard that about the G model. I did not know that.
It just...
I think it was Jim Beggarly last night was telling me about, he was landing in the fog, and the lights would tip down, and he said he had one of them hang up, so it wasn't coming down even, and it gave him an artificial horizon as he was coming through, and then he saw the trees, and he's like, I knew I was in big trouble. He said, and I whipped it around, he said, whoo, but he said, yeah, and then he figured out that light was hung up, and it wasn't all the way down, so he had different angles, lights reflecting off the fog.
You bet.
Who?
You bet.
That does not sound like it would be a good experience.
The optics of landing and taking off, as far as that goes, are a real problem. One of my projects with the VFW at home, we got a couple of the F-16 pilots to come and talk to us during Memorial Day. And the one guy in particular, a light colonel, he'd had some time in Afghanistan and around the Saudi Arabian, the Middle East. And he kind of choked up for a while, but he caught it again. He was describing a friend of his that took off and lost it in the fading sunlight. It's tricky working in a fading light. And evidently the guy just got disoriented and failed to eject.
Oh. Did you ever have to eject or use the extraction system?
I never used it, not once. I did consider it one night. I don't know if you're familiar with what a chip light is.
Yes, I am. Chip light goes out. That's an attention getter.
Boy, and how.
So explain that to everybody what a chip light is.
Okay, there's a magnetic plug in the bottom of the engine crankcase. And it's just nothing more than two D-shaped things that are magnetic that will suck any iron out of the oil. And once it makes across there, it illuminates a tiniest little light. It's about this big, and it's right underneath the gun sight, so it's square in your 12 o'clock. And that light at night, when you're 300 miles deep in Indian country, is that big. There is a recording. One of the spookies had a radio, a tape recorder with him. And he had a recording of that particular flight. That was Mort Plum, is his name. And
did he give you that recording?
No,
oh.
I didn't want it.
I imagine you sounded like those guys on the ground.
You got it. You're exactly right. I was Joe Cool saying, hey, I'm going to get rid of the rest of my napalms. I've got a chip light. And the recording says it all. Only dogs could hear my voice. I got a chip light.
Yeah, and the reason for the chip light is if there's metal, something could be coming apart in there, and you really need to be aware of it. It could be minor, or it could be catastrophic really quick.
It could be, yeah. The engine would seize.
Yeah.
And you never know.
And I imagine the Skyraider's got the glide path of a rock. It's a pretty big aircraft.
At that time, yeah, I would have had to clean the wings off and do the best I could, I guess, to get someplace. There were a lot of areas in North Laos that were relatively safe, but there were also areas where if they caught you as a pilot, you might be in deep trouble.
Isn't that where the Pathet Lao were operating pretty heavy up in northern Laos?
Yes, sir.
And I think it was, what was the general up there? That was always,
Vang Pao.
Yeah, General Vang Pao was battling the Pathet Lao.
He died not very long ago, 3 or 4 years ago.
Did he? I did not hear that.
4 or 5, and he was still fighting the war. He got in trouble with the cops for trying to export automatic weapons back to Laos.
He never gave up.
He never gave up.
He believed in his culture and his people. And
you bet.
I remember hearing how when he left, he was like, I'm coming back, and he meant it.
He meant it. He meant every word of it.
Yeah.
The Hmong tribesmen are in a kind of a tight-knit group in the St. Paul area in Minnesota, and they invited me to come talk to them about 4 years ago, something like that, on Thanksgiving Day. And I remember asking them about General Vang Pao, and every single man I asked or spoke to or talked to spoke of that man with reverence. He's dead, Rich. He's not with us anymore, but we sure miss him.
He was a good leader and a good warrior.
Damn right.
I remember seeing pictures, and he was so young.
He was, yeah, he just wasn't that old.
Yeah, he was, a very young guy to be running an entire army, and he did very well with the conditions and what he had to work with. Because the more I talk to people and the more I study, the onslaught of the communists coming down through Laos with all the munitions, and people don't understand that they haven't learned that part of history, why we were there. The communists went there to run all the munitions into South Vietnam, and then you had guys like General Vang up there at the front with all of their tribesmen trying to keep that at bay and keep those people out. And so, yeah. And then we were there trying to keep everything from being in the South because we wouldn't attack Haiphong Harbor because it was a political concern.
Decision, yep.
And that all went back to Korea. Nobody wanted to get the Chinese involved in another battle after we pushed the 38th parallel, so we were in a war playing half an offense going, well, maybe, and that's no way to go into a war.
That is an accurate summation of the whole situation.
Yeah, you have it.
War is a
You
total...
should not go to war if you're not planning on going with everything.
Sun Tzu.
Yes, Sun Tzu was... I remember each time a president is elected, I'm like, God, I hope they read Sun Tzu's The Art of War. If we wind up somewhere, you really should have... It's a small book. It's an easy read.
It's short, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
but
just
it's
13,
right to the point.
13 chapters.
Yeah. Yeah.
No big deal.
No.
Von Clausewitz. I haven't, Von Clausewitz.
Okay.
I haven't read his book yet.
I have not. No.
But he wrote a book on war.
Did he?
You bet. And the principles still apply.
Yeah. I think the opening chapter was, war is the most serious undertaking of business. And wasn't that it with Sun Tzu? He was
something like...
He said it was the most serious business and you don't enter into it lightly. If you're going to go...
Go all out.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like anything else. When you study history and you can look back at it, I studied I studied World War II. And when I was studying where we were at the beginning of World War II, logistically, other than having all kinds of resources, we shouldn't have won. I mean,
that's
Hitler
true.
Had us, we were down to, our army had been totally disbanded and guys were practicing shooting machine guns with stovepipes. They were practicing, it was a stovepipe, and they would sit out and a truck would drive by and they would, mimic moving the gun, and they would throw bags of flour at the truck saying it was a tank. And I was like, we didn't have anything. I think we had 18 tanks at the time. It was very small, the number of tanks we had, because Patton had just gotten them, and it was small. We had very few tanks. I could be wrong on the 18, but it was not a big number, not compared to what we walked into.
Yeah.
Our industrial might is what really saved us.
There are a couple things that are key. One is fuel was destroyed, and that helped a lot. Ball bearings, that was strategic. That helped a lot. The rest of it was sheer mass, numbers.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed them.
Yeah. He made a huge strategic error when he attacked the Western Front and attacked the Russians. When he split his forces, it was just a matter of time.
Then it was over. Yeah. It just,
You can't bite everybody fight everybody.
We'd be speaking German.
Yes, we did.
Or Japanese.
Or Japanese, yes. But is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Rich?
Rich, that pretty much covers what the things that I have done that I can talk about. There are some things that are painful to me, and I'll just keep that all to myself.
May I ask you, when it came down to the mission of saving a man versus a bombing mission, what was that like when you knew somebody close by, whether it's a SAR, whether it was a prairie fire, whether it was troops in contact? What did that mean to you when you went in? What were you prepared to do?
All of those scenarios, prairie fire, TIC, troops in contact, so on and so forth. In the end, it would have been nice to come home, as far as that goes. But I had in my mind that if these guys need a hand, I'm going to stay with them and do the best I can, even if I run short of fuel and can't get home. The idea is the close air support is what it is. It's another arm of the guy on the ground, and he needs it. If and when he needs it badly. So I went into that combat with that thought in mind that if these guys call me for whatever reason, I'm going to stay with them until we get them out of trouble. And that was my mindset at that time. No, we didn't. Did I talk about Lima Site 36?
No.
I had the day before Lima Site 36 fell, I had a flight of 4 F-4s, and we knew there was an active shooting contest going on, but we didn't know much about it, disposition or where troops were or whatever. But they did tell me one thing. Intel said, go on up there, they're going to mark the target with a 105, Willie Pete. All right, works for me. We got up there, and sure enough, they lobbed a 105 out to the east side of the site, which is kind of on the uphill. Well, it's sort of uphill in that country. There's a dip in there. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, said that's where you want it. Yep, that's where the bad guys everywhere. All right. Well, now, about 3 days earlier, I had a situation where it was a flight of 4 F-4s, and 3 was calling lead, sir. Nobody calls lead, sir. Nobody, unless it's a general or a full colonel. And lead, being having some years on him, did what all old heads do. He was diving, pulled up, and released the weapons. They hit the ground 5 miles from the target. And I rode him up safety of flight. And I got my ass chewed for that. But let's face it, there are guys that belong in the cockpit and there are guys that don't. And this is a judgment call on the part of the instructors in this game. They cleared me to fly. I don't know why. I'm not really all that competent, but for some reason or other, got away with it. Anyhow, here's my 4 F-4s overhead. Wall-to-wall CBU. People killing weapon. Really is. Said, all right, we ain't having no short rounds here. You guys can run in on any easterly heading you choose. Spread it out. I want you to run in on anywhere from 160. And I gave them numbers around a 030 or something like that. Run in from the west side. And I don't want any short rounds. None. Is that clear? Acknowledge in order. 2, 3, 4. All right. So I went down there and put down 2 smokes, one fairly close to the site and one a little farther out. And I told the guys, okay, you got your orders. You're cleared in hot, obliterate everything in between those 2 smokes. And they did. When they got finished, there was nothing in there but arms and legs. They sent back a report. I think it was about 3 days later that we got the report that there were 250 plus KBA. So we took out the entire east prong of that attack, and they had to reman that from the north and south prongs. If I had only known at that time, we had the means, we had the weapons, we could have eliminated the threat all the way around.
I remember reading about that, and I believe, didn't they come up the backside or the steepest side that nobody expected?
I believe that's true.
Yes.
And I'm not totally familiar with that geography, and it's been a few years. Forgive me for that. But
now, can you tell what the Lima sites were for folks out here so they can understand? We had several Lima sites around the area, and they were conducting what kind of an operation? What was their task at a Lima site?
Mostly, the Lima sites were safe areas. The L for Lima came from Laos, and which became Lima sites, which was an alternative name for the particular town or village or runway in the case of 36. We actually had an aircraft land at 36 and was recovered later by one of the heavy lift helicopters.
Weren't they also conducting electronics operations?
Okay, you're talking about Lima 98
Yes, Lima, that's what it was.
on the battleship Karst.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had, at one time, they had a functioning TACAN up there, which you could bomb off. It was not that precise, but it would at least get you in the area. They had an RBS, the radar scoring, and they would arc light with that. And they could get weapons through the weather and down into North Vietnam.
That became a very sought-after target for the North Vietnamese.
The North, yeah,
to eliminate that set of eyes that we could work with.
they wanted to take that out badly, and they did in the long run. General Vang offered to lead a charge up that hill to go to retake that site. And I do not know the exact circumstances of how he was dissuaded on that thing. General had a very touchy sense of honor and really good military instincts. I think he would have done just fine if they would have turned him loose and let him go.
Mm-hmm. He seemed like a fierce warrior.
He was.
But very smart. It wasn't just wild. He was, from what I've read.
It was controlled.
Yeah. But he was
quite
well
serious.
respected by his adversary.
Boy, you got that right.
Yeah.
You got that right.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. Anything else that you'd like to chat about while we're here?
Yes.
Let's talk. Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much for doing this.
I was going to say, let's talk about our buddy John Mollison. Let's do a shout out to John while we're here.
All right, John.
At, John?
We need you, John.
That's it. There's wine and scotch and
No.
everything here.
Oh, scotch. Oh.
Yeah.
No. Rich, thank you for what you're doing. It is important.
Take one. Fast movers in the night means search and rescue at first light. Hey, beeper, come up, voice. Get your young ass on that horse. We took big air bursts on this star. This could be my silver star. We bring Charlie Grease by all means. Stands with a load. I see an F4 taking off and I start to think, why don't they move it? Why don't they jinx? Seems like every song I've been on since I've been down. It was for some fast mover who was fucking around, but it's our bag and we don't care. Like the dust and we'll be there. We fly war machines by all means. Stands with a load. Stands with a load.